Okay, let's kick things off with a number that should absolutely grab your attention: 91%. As of early 2026, that is exactly how much crude oil India relies on imports to secure. I mean, think about that. Almost all of the energy powering our daily lives is coming from outside our borders. This exposes us to massive global price volatility, and honestly, it sets incredibly high stakes for everything we're going to unpack today.
Welcome to our explainer. Today, we are leaning into the concept of the butterfly effect as we break down the major current affairs of April 2026. We're going to connect the dots between these massive global events and the very real, everyday domestic realities happening literally right outside your front door. It is absolutely fascinating to see how a decision made halfway across the world eventually trickles down to change the laws we follow, the prices we pay, and even the environment we live in.
So here is our roadmap for today. We're breaking this explainer down into 3 parts. First, global shocks and the energy crisis. Second, constitutional shifts and law. And finally, climate threats and future tech.
Let's dive right into part 1, global shocks in the energy crisis.
What we're seeing right now is a perfect example of a geopolitical domino effect. Step 1 starts with escalating naval tensions between the U.S. and Iran, which resulted in a U.S. naval blockade meant to pressure a nuclear deal. Well, Step 2 is where it hits closer to home. That blockade severely impacts the Strait of Hormuz. Now, why does that matter? Because that single choke point handles 80% of India's LPG imports. Which brings us right to Step 3, a massive spike in our fuel prices as global LPG prices surge by around 44%.
So what does this actually look like on the ground? The immediate economic shock is severe. We've seen commercial LPG prices jump by nearly 218 rupees in metro cities. And because domestic rates are currently being controlled to protect everyday households, the oil marketing companies, the OMCs, are the ones absorbing these massive financial losses. We're talking nearly 380 rupees lost per cylinder. Our fuel pricing system is just under immense stress from these global market forces. But we have to connect this macroeconomic shock back to the human element. The higher food, transport, and rental expenses driven by this energy spike have made urban survival basically unaffordable for many of India's 4.1 crore interstate migrant workers. Many are being forced to temporarily pack up and return to their villages. And to combat the fuel shortages, kerosene has been temporarily reintroduced under the public distribution system for 60 days. This is a severe setback for India's clean energy goals, bringing right back all those serious concerns over indoor air pollution.
All right, moving right along to part 2, constitutional shifts in law.
Get a load of this number, 850. Under the proposed 131st Constitutional Amendment Bill, the Lok Sabha is set for a massive expansion, jumping all the way from its current 543 seats up to 850. This marks a major overhaul of democratic representation in India, officially ending decades of the seat freeze.
Now, a change of this magnitude obviously comes with some intense debate, and we really need to look impartially at both sides here. The arguments for the expansion point out that it corrects urban underrepresentation and, crucially, it facilitates the immediate implementation of the 33% women's reservation. However, the arguments against it highlight some severe structural concerns. Because it uses population-based delimitation, there is a very real risk of a federal imbalance that heavily favors northern states while disadvantaging southern states. Plus, the delimitation bill establishes a commission whose decisions literally cannot be challenged in courts, which has sparked serious fears of gerrymandering.
Zooming into the state level for a moment, we have another major constitutional development. The Gujarat Legislative Assembly has just passed the Uniform Civil Code Bill 2026. This makes Gujarat the second state, right after Uttarakhand, to implement uniform civil laws. The core legal changes here mandate monogamy, require the mandatory registration of marriages and live-in relationships, and establish judicial-only divorce. Notably, though, the law strictly exempts scheduled tribes from its purview.
Let's shift over to the Supreme Court and see how they are actually expanding fundamental rights. The court just declared that road safety is now a fundamental right under Article 21, the right to life. And, with India facing a severe road crisis, we're talking about contributing to roughly 11% of all global road fatalities, with 1.77 lakh deaths annually. The court used its powers to issue binding nationwide directions. This includes things like banning highway parking and mandating the creation of district-level road safety task forces.
That right to life was also prioritized in another really landmark ruling. The Supreme Court allowed a 15-year-old minor to terminate a 7-month pregnancy. The court reaffirmed that reproductive choice is inherently part of Article 21, emphasizing that minors absolutely possess bodily autonomy. They prioritized this constitutional right over the strict legal gestational limits that are normally outlined in the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act.
All right, wrapping things up with Part 3, Climate Threats and Future Tech.
This next topic is incredibly sobering. Childhood cancer is rapidly emerging as a major cause of death in India, actually replacing infectious diseases as a leading health threat. India now reports up to 75,000 pediatric cancer cases annually. To put that into perspective, we now shoulder nearly 20% of the entire global burden. And tragically, the survival rate here is only about 40%, compared to over 80% in high-income countries. Crucially, experts are increasingly linking this to environmental factors, like severe air pollution and pesticide exposure.
Speaking of the environment, let's unpack a bit of climate jargon you might be hearing lately, the AMOC. The Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation functions basically like a global ocean heat transport system. It moves warm water north and cold water south to balance the Earth's temperatures. But due to climate change, specifically this massive freshwater influx from melting Greenland ice, this vital current is weakening. Scientists are sounding the alarm that it is nearing a dangerous tipping point, and a full collapse could trigger completely irreversible global climate impacts.
Transitioning from the natural environment right into the digital frontier, India has just introduced the Prague Rules of 2026 to overhaul online gaming. The government is entirely banning real money online gaming, while at the same time officially permitting and classifying esports. To manage all of this, a newly established regulator, the Online Gaming Authority of India, is stepping in. They'll enforce strict user protection, age verification, and really tight financial controls across this massive digital sector.
Sticking with digital regulation, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has amended the IT Rules 2021 specifically to combat the scary rise of AI deepfakes and misinformation. And let me tell you, the new regulatory checklists are incredibly strict. Any AI-generated synthetic content must now carry continuously visible labels. It also demands strict traceability using permanent metadata, watermarks, and unique identifiers. However, this comes with major hurdles, right? Metadata can still be tampered with, and compliance is going to heavily increase operational costs for the digital platforms.
Which brings us to a really critical crossroads. On one hand, we absolutely 100% need to prevent the misuse of synthetic media to protect our elections and prevent fraud. But on the other hand, overregulation could completely slow down the very technological growth we are pushing so hard for. So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Does strict AI regulation build the essential digital trust we need in a modern democracy, or does it stifle the very startup innovation that India's future economy relies on? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep exploring, and I'll see you next time.